What's going on, everybody? We're coming to you with a live edition of the Decide Guys Football Forum because we have some breaking news to come after you with, and we had to bring a special guest onto our live stream as well. Obviously, you know me. I'm one of your co-hosts on the Decide Guys Football Forum. I'm Armor Desai. You know Tad Desai. He's one of my great co-hosts there for sure. But we are joined by Ryan Anderson of LAFB Network, a fellow Niner fan, and he covers a lot of great stuff for us on LAFB Network. Rams. He did I think you were at the East-West Shrine game during the draft, right? The draft season there. So it's like he's covering anything and everything. We love having him on. It's been a while, Ryan, but with breaking news like this, we had to bring you on, right? You're covering it from both angles, both Rams and Niners.
Yeah, it's great to be back. I got to say, Rams fans were super excited about this. A couple of weeks ago, we were going live talking some Rams football, and somebody in the text was writing in that we should go after Christian McCaffrey. Not to jump to breaking news. I think everybody that's watching already knows, but Rams fans have been super excited about some movement before the trade deadline.
100%. And yeah, if you're catching this live right now, we are breaking the news here. I mean, we're not breaking the news. We're hearing the breaking news. I think Ian Rappaport broke the news for us. The Niners have just acquired Christian McCaffrey from the Carolina Panthers. This is great for the 49ers. This is great for fantasy football managers who have Christian McCaffrey on their roster. We're going to get into all of this. But Tad, we definitely need to set the record straight. What was the compensation package for the Niners to acquire Christian McCaffrey?
Okay, so as always, I am referring to Adam Schefter for this information, but the 49ers traded the second, third, and fourth round pick in 2023, so this upcoming draft, and a fifth round pick in 2024 for straight up Christian McCaffrey. So basically, they gave up. It's and for those of you who will hear this later on, Amir and I were recording our podcast episode while this trade happened. So this was a little interesting, but this reminds me a lot of the Ricky Williams trade. So essentially, the 49ers gave up their entire boatload of draft picks in 2023 for Christian McCaffrey, and they gave up a 2024 fifth-round pick. So, Amir, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys are not picking until about the fifth or sixth round now.
I think we have some compensatory picks because of the signing of Robert Saleh and Mike McDaniel. So I think we have a couple of third-round picks coming our way. But yeah, I mean, essentially we gave up all of our draft next year and a little bit of the following year because we still this is the coming year, the draft year. That was the last year that the Niners had a first round, not having a first round pick because of the trade up for Trey Lance there. So but yeah, obviously we're not going to talk too much about Niners as much as I want to about the Niners side of this. We want to give the fantasy implications, but first let's sort of give the Rams perspective here, Ryan, and that's why we brought you on here because the Niners were obviously in conversation here to acquire Christian McCaffrey. The Rams were in conversation to acquire Christian McCaffrey. And I think the Bills were in conversation to possibly acquire Christian McCaffrey as well. But this is the big thing because, I mean, the Rams notoriously give up their draft picks to go and get some of these big name players. And it totally worked out for them last year with the trade for Von Miller. They obviously traded for Matthew Stafford in the offseason. It won him a Super Bowl. And so you thought with this sort of situation, with the firing of Matt Rule in Carolina there, the Panthers were going at the fire sale. Brian Burns is rumored to be possibly a Rams trade candidate, and obviously Christian McCaffrey with all the issues in the backfield with the Rams, that's like this could possibly have happened. And so it's like, I'm gonna pass it to you here. Just like, I mean, as a Rams fan, like, did you really think that this was going to materialize, or is this just something like, you know, we're feeling some offers, or I mean, just like, give us the Rams take here on unfortunately not acquiring Christian McCaffrey?
Well, originally, when I first heard about Christian McCaffrey's trade, I was thinking Carolina's going to want a lot for them, and I had read and seen other reports that they were looking for 2 first rounders or something like that. I mean, they got
safe with a guy of his caliber. I mean, it's safe to sort of ask that sort of compensation for him.
Yeah, even with the guy, he's got a lot of tread on the tires, coming off a couple of big injuries. So the question with the Rams was, can they possibly afford that? Their next number 1 draft pick is going to be 2024. So was that on the table? Are they possibly thinking that that's a draft pick that could go toward Stafford's successor or a top offensive lineman or something like that? Something that we've learned that they need. So Jordan Rodriguez reported out earlier that they would go so far as to a second, a future third, and maybe a player to go along with that. So with that kind of, depending on who that maybe player was in there, the Rams weren't willing to go as far as the 49ers obviously were. So that maybe a player would have had to been someone pretty significant. And the Rams are just in no place to lose any of their top guys right now.
So do you have any ideas? Sorry to interrupt you, Murph, but do you have any ideas who maybe that player was? Because that's the crazy thing to me. Like you said, it's like they should have multiple first rounders as a result of this trade, but the 49ers, as Cap makes his surprise appearance.
It's such breaking news. Cap has to get involved too.
He needs to be involved in this. But that's what shocked me the most out of this trade is the fact that the 49ers did not have to give up a first-round pick for this. That's the craziest part. Or a player.
We were talking about this on our podcast when we broke this news. It was just like the fact that they didn't have to give one of their really good players like a Brandon Ayuk or, Jeff Wilson Jr., Elijah Mitchell. I know he's hurt, but it's like that could have been a really good fill-in piece for Carolina. Or anybody on the defense, too. It's like,
please do not bring up Jeff Wilson. I just pulled off a massive
Jeff Wilson Jr., obviously.
That has been a terrible trade at this point. But that's my entire confusion here is what player is enough for the Rams to say no? If this is the price they're willing to sell for, is it Taylor Rapp? Because that's the closest player I can think of a young player that the Rams would say no, we want to hold on to him to. Because I don't understand why they would say no to this.
Well, I shook my head at first to Taylor Rapp because I don't know why the Panthers are super interested in a decent safety.
They have Jeremy Chin, yeah.
Rapp is on his rookie deal, last year of his rookie deal, so he's going to be a free agent next year. So maybe they think, okay, we'll throw him in there. But if you're the Panthers, you got to be thinking toward the future. Obviously, nothing is happening this year. They're going to have one of the top draft picks going in, so they just picked up a bunch of capital for the future, which is where they got to be. They don't even know who their coach is for next year. So, I think in terms of picking up what they did, I think they did a good job getting what they did from the 49ers. If I were them and I was looking maybe at what the Rams had to offer me, I might think about somebody like Allen Robinson, who hasn't blown the doors off in Los Angeles. But Carolina has a decent pass rush. Secondary is okay. Rams don't have a lot to offer for the secondary. And Carolina's good on the defensive line. Nothing to offer from the offensive line. Cam Akers has been in the news as somebody that they've been looking to move. Just between a personal conflict between how Cam Akers views the running game and how Sean McVay wants to use him. But a guy coming off of an Achilles injury who hasn't proven anything in the handful of games that he's played in so far. So, yeah, I just don't think there was a congruent meeting point. I know the Rams were in there. I'm sure they were trying to do what they can, and they're always willing to make that big splash. Had they pulled the trigger on somebody like Allen Robinson or something like that, that's a tough pill to swallow because they just traded to get him.
Yeah. I think the big thing, Ryan, that's very interesting to me is that you just brought up the situation with Cam Akers and the fact that they're trying to either possibly resolve the situation in LA or they're looking to move him to get him into a situation where he's comfortable with. So you'd think that, like you said, with the report that they were looking for multiple day 2, possibly day 3 picks and a player in return, you'd like to think that the Rams possibly might have just offered Cam Akers as part of that trade with some of those later round picks. So it's like, I'm curious as to why maybe they didn't consider that. And I think the one other thing that I want to toss over to you, with all the splash moves that the Rams have made in the past couple of years, and obviously the success that it led to last season with them winning a Super Bowl, do you think there is a little bit of spite from San Francisco that's like, oh, no, we don't want Los Angeles to get him. We are going to get him, and we'll do almost anything to sort of do that. So it's just like, what are your thoughts on that being a possibility too?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a connection between the McVay and Shanahan, and McVay got the better of the Stafford trade that happened before last season, paid off in spades for the Rams. So, I mean, a lot of pride between these guys in their several games over the past 5 years. Lots of big brother, little brother kind of talk. Lots of, Shanahan owning McVay and renting free space in his head and all that good stuff. So I think absolutely. And looking at it from the 49ers perspective, this is kind of the first, big kind of player to, in-season trade that they've made in a long time. And, they're looking at what the Rams did last year, and that, like I said, it paid off, them taking those risks. So maybe they're assuming that they'll get the same kind of benefit from that. I mean, I have definite questions about his Christian McCaffrey's health over a long period of time. And the money is a thing too. Money kind of takes care of itself with these smart franchises though. So like LA and San Francisco, they can always seem to make it work. And I'm sure there's going to be some restructuring going on, so he doesn't take such a huge cap hit. Yeah.
No,
so
100%
Ryan,
makes a ton of sense there. Yeah.
One thing I want to ask you about is, do you think the Rams have started this new kind of trend of, because this has always been a complaint I've had where NFL teams tend to overvalue draft picks? Because if you remember, we did a NFL mock draft way back last March, I think. If I have that,
it was April. Correct. It was closer to the draft.
It was April, March, whatever. It was last spring, and there was a commenter on YouTube that said, "Wow, Tad really undervalues his draft picks." So all I said was, "If you are a solid contributor, I'm pretty happy with that." Because if you look at the amount of first-round picks that are just straight up busts, it's way higher than people think. So do you think that this is kind of kicking off a new trend where, NFL teams are more willing to trade draft picks for the proven commodity?
Well, and your last phrase there is the point. A proven commodity, a known commodity. We know this guy is a hard worker. He shows up on time. He's doing his homework. He's watching film. He's a good player. Like, that's somebody you want to trade for. Whereas a draft pick, even when you're picking in the top, it's a crapshoot. It's 50-50 at best. We've seen quarterback after quarterback that have just come into the league and gotten out of the league.
Zach Wilson.
Sorry. Hey,
we'll see. Jury's still out on Zach Wilson. Jury's still out on Zach Wilson.
Yeah. So I think smart franchises will smartly assess the trade capital that they have. And like I was talking about Carolina, trade capital is super important to them. They're going to bring on a bunch of people that are going to play it on minimum, rookie deals, and they're just going to take a bunch of bites at the apple. Whereas if you look at a team like Buffalo, they got to be looking to make moves that are going to solidify them going forward. So, it's the age-old like sports fandom question of, do you want to win the big game, or would you rather be Seattle or New Orleans with one championship, or Los Angeles Rams with one championship? I mean, getting to the big game, Murray, I'm sure you can sympathize with this. Those two Niners Super Bowls for Niner fans, that's tough. I mean,
it's rough. It's rough for sure.
But I mean, I'm getting off the topic there. But the point of the point of this game is to win football games and to win and get to the Super Bowl and win it. So I think if a team wants to do that, if they want to go after it, chase a championship. Everybody's coming down on the Rams because they went all in, and now look at them. I mean, they got the championship, so.
So we have some comments here about, fantasy value for Deebo Samuel particularly. We're going to get to the fantasy football talk for sure. But last question I want to throw out to you, Ryan, here, as far as just a general question here. Obviously, this shifts a lot of things in the NFC West as far as the division race is concerned. So how do you feel like things have shifted now? Because obviously it's like, with the weird season that we've had, the NFC West is all at 3-3, 2-3, around these sort of records here where it's like very above 500, around 500. The Cardinals just won today, so they're at 3-5. I think I can't remember exactly what the record is, but they just got a win now, 3-4, excuse me. So it's just like, how do you see this division race playing out now with a big move in Christian McCaffrey now being a part of the San Francisco 49ers?
I think in a lot of ways these teams are evenly matched. Geno Smith is an MVP candidate apparently, so you got that going.
That's the weird season we've been having, my man.
So weird.
DeAndre Hopkins first came back, had a really good game.
Right.
We'll see how that offense translates over time. The Rams are getting a whole bunch of guys back. They're getting Van Jefferson back. Their offensive line looked a lot better with Alaric Jackson at left tackle over Joe Noteboom. I mean, Joe Noteboom got hurt, but once he did fill in, he looked better. And the Niners have just once again having a very hard time staying healthy. So all of their fates just hang on different hooks, as it were. And so. It's a roll of the dice. I have such a hard time predicting at this point because, there's been times that I thought the 49ers were going to take the division. Before the season, I was thinking, oh man, the Cardinals they're just going to run away with this thing.
Yeah.
I never predicted that the Rams were going to look as bad as they do on offense, but I do have faith in their coaching staff that they're going to get things figured out. For
sure. This definitely just right. Go ahead.
I apologize because I didn't answer your question.
It's all good.
All I know is someone predicted that Allen Robinson wasn't going to be as good as he is, but
we're talking about the division here, so let Ryan answer his question about how he thinks the division is going to shake out now.
I had to get that in there while he's here.
Christian McCaffrey adds a ton of interesting wrinkles to an already interesting offense. So that is something that is going to be a lot of fun to watch at the very worst. At the best, it's gonna really help Jimmy Garoppolo explode, getting off short passes. Just another option for him to get yards after the catch. And then a weapon in the backfield, and they still have Elijah Mitchell coming back from injury at some point in the near future. So, I mean, he's got a lot of weapons, and hopefully for the 49ers and their fans, it'll raise the ceiling a bit for Jimmy Garoppolo.
I think another thing it's going to raise is ticket prices at Santa Clara Levi Stadium now because of the acquisition of Christian McCaffrey. And I think this is a good transition point here, Tad, to sort of get into the fantasy implications of Christian McCaffrey now being a member of the San Francisco 49ers. In case you're tuning in right now, I mean, this is a big move. The Niners have really just pushed all their chips into the center. They're going all in, Super Bowl or bust, even with Jimmy Garoppolo under center. So, yeah, this is going to be very interesting. But, yeah, let's spin this to the fantasy side here, Tad. So, I mean, we were talking about this in our podcast that we obviously interrupted our one segment to bring this breaking news. And it's just amazing because when Christian McCaffrey was part of the draft process and he was in his rookie year, people were talking about when the Niners and the Carolina Panthers played, I think it was very early in the season, people were talking about like, oh my God, can you imagine Christian McCaffrey fitting in this Kyle Shanahan San Francisco offense with the skills and the talent that he has? They were talking about that like 4 years ago. And now the fact that this is going to happen, I mean, this is just insanity because Ryan, you brought this up. They traded him because of that yards after the catch value, that yak value, because it's like now you have guys like Deebo, who's such an amazing yards after the catch guy. You got George Kittle, who is an absolute monster when he gets the balls in his hand. Now you got Christian McCaffrey, who could do the same thing. He's a gifted catcher. He could run the ball too. I mean, Kyle Shanahan can put him wherever he wants. In the backfield, he could put him in the slot. I mean, there's so many things that he can do. And so it's like, just if you have this guy, obviously now you need to hang on to him on your fantasy roster. But I brought this fact too, that it's like, if you are absolutely in the dreads and you don't have, a great fantasy roster, you could trade him for a big haul to shore up your roster too. But I mean, Tad, I want to kick it to you here. Just Christian McCaffrey on the Niners fantasy implication. I mean, this is just huge, right?
Well, so this is what I'm doing all these hand motions, right? Because you're bringing up all these receiving stats. Here's the crazy thing, okay? So I want to throw this to Ryan first. So, Ryan, you give out your guess. Murray, you give out your guess. So, Ryan, guess how many receptions that Jeff Wilson, who, by the way, has been one, before this whole thing happened, was one of the fantasy breakout stars of the season. Guess how many receptions he's had in the last 3 games? Don't look it up. I see. Hold on. I'm so sorry. Amir, stop typing.
I've tried to respond to all of our folks who have some questions fantasy-wise.
I'm sure you are. I'm sure
I'm
you
trying
are.
to appease them. I'm trying to appease them.
I'm sure you are. So, Ryan, so sorry. So, how many receptions has Jeff Wilson had in the last 3 games?
15.
15. Merp?
I'm going to say 0.
1.
Yeah. They haven't involved him in the passing game. They use him mainly as a rusher.
That shows how valuable this offense is to a good run. Not even a good running back, just a decent running back, right? I don't think Jeff Wilson is this, once in a generation talent, or not even like a good running back. Jeff Wilson would be a solid backup on it. He's a slightly worse Alexander Madison. Is the best way I could explain. I could describe Jeff Wilson to a non-football fan. So my entire thing is that like they were able to turn Jeff Wilson into a guy who has scored 10 plus fantasy points up until this past week for the last 3 weeks. So now that you have a guy like Christian McCaffrey, he is infinitely more valuable now. And I'm so mad because I submitted a trade request for Christian McCaffrey just a couple days ago. Literally by a couple days ago, I mean yesterday. It was rejected today.
It's not happening now. Definitely not happening
now because like this is the perfect Shanahan running back right here. And it is blowing my mind the fact that they were able to get him for so relatively cheap. Because again, I know a lot of 49ers fans, and I promise on the way to work tomorrow, you're going to hear people on sports radio going, "We gave up too much. We did too much for him."
Possibly.
Absolutely not. This is Christian McCaffrey is a once-in-a-generation proven talent. And so if you can, hopefully the guy in your league that is yet to, he's asleep and he's yet to see this news, maybe you can pull off a trade. But Christian McCaffrey just catapulted to a top 3 fantasy running back, in my opinion.
Does Kyle Shanahan get him back to a 1,000 rushing receiver?
He could, if it happened early. I don't think it will happen this season. I don't, because it's too late in the season. We're week 7 now. I don't think he'll be able to get to that point just because of how bad Carolina's offense was. But next season, absolutely. Christian McCaffrey, we're talking about him potentially going first overall over guys like Austin Eckler, over guys like Derrick Henry, just because of the fit of the system and the player. Like, this is a match made in heaven right here.
100%. So I think we have a fellow Niner fan in the YouTube comments here talking about Roger Craig part 2 here. And, like Ryan alluded to, like Ryan alluded to, Christian McCaffrey became the 3rd player in NFL history to have 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards, to go with Roger Craig and Marshall Faulk when he was a member of the St. Louis Rams. Sorry, Ted, the St. Louis Rams.
God damn you. Shout out the Rams. God damn you had to bring this up.
But let's flip things, Tad, because obviously this is great for the 49ers. But now let's look at it at the Panthers side, because, I mean, we kind of talked about this with the absence of Christian McCaffrey from that backfield now. I know they're using a little bit of Deontay Foreman, but I think the guy that you want to roster now, if you still have some waiver spots on your bench, and you need to do this now because before everybody else clambers to the waiver wire to get this guy, because the waiver claims have gone now with the Thursday night action, go get Chuba Hubbard, because in the place of Christian McCaffrey last season when he missed games, Chuba Hubbard actually looked really good in that offense. And I think now with them clearly going with the rebuild, I'm wondering if Carolina is now going to go with Chuba Hubbard, potentially a little bit longer than just this season, because he did showcase some skills. He looked really good at Oklahoma State, if I remember correctly, right? Chuba Hubbard went to Oklahoma State?
Yes, Oklahoma State. Yeah, bring that up because he absolutely.
Sorry, I just had to make sure. So I mean, it's like he could be a really good situation there, but possibly we may see some sharing with D'Onta Foreman there. But just like Tad, what do you think about the Carolina situation as far as fantasy implications at the running back? Because I know probably the passing situation is not going to be all that great with PJ Walker, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, whoever's going to be playing there. I mean, the rest of the guys probably not all that great, but just the running backfield, I think we could possibly find a gold nugget there, possibly with the trade of Christian McCaffrey.
Well, so again, it doesn't really matter how talented Chuba Hubbard is, right? Like, you have to remember as well, like when Christian McCaffrey went down with the injury last year, he stepped in pretty well. There were a couple games where he had a little bit of a down, week. But
and he was overall, a rookie, so he's sort of easing it into it too. But it's like, I think once he got his feet wet, he looked a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. So the more he got used to it, Cap's about to come into the frame, by the way. But
he's got some Chuba Hubbard takes.
Exactly. He's very used to Chuba Hubbard. But the more Chuba Hubbard played, that's a great way to put it. The more he got his feet wet, the more comfortably he got in the system. And it's just, look, bottom line, I don't care how talented the guy is. He is the only capable running back they have left. Their backups are not good. So Chuba Hubbard is absolutely worth the waiver wire pickup right now. So I love Chuba Hubbard as a pickup. I think he was absolutely worth the value. Now, not to kick it back to the Rams for too long, but real quick, Ryan, I want to kick it back to the Rams in this case is how much more valuable is Darrell Henderson now? Because I know this was kind of killing Henderson's value. I didn't pick up Henderson on the waiver wire this week because I was concerned about some of the rumors I was hearing. So Darrell Henderson, is he worth a pickup on waiver wires? Not, because Chuba Hubbard, that's a much more interesting question to me. Chuba Hubbard, absolutely worth the pickup. If you're hurting for a running back, pick up Hubbard right now. But Henderson, is he worth the pickup right now?
And I think the more interesting question, Ryan, that I want to also piggyback off of that.
Wow, you're stacking interesting question on top of my interesting question.
Oh, of course. I got to stack this one because it's more of a deep stash that I'm wondering if people are not recognizing as much now, that with the Cam Akers situation, you obviously are rostering Darrell Henderson, if he's out there. But now it's like, think about Kyren Williams, who was struggling with injuries to start the season. He's now looking healthy. He could possibly see some action. I think I read somewhere that Sean McVay says that this guy has some involvement in this offense. We have game plan for that. But just like, what do you think about Kyren Williams how's he going to look in this offense? Is he going to eat into Darrell Henderson's target share, carry share sort of thing? So it's like, how can that reflect to fantasy football purposes then?
I mean, thinking that Sean McVay is going to run the ball more than 20 times a game, that's not a good bet, I wouldn't say. So if I'm not too into the intricacies of fantasy football, but Darrell Henderson's not going to get a lot of carries.
Okay. Interesting.
He's going to get more carries, now that Cam Akers isn't around, but they're just not running the ball a lot, period. And the reports are that Kyren Williams is going to be a much bigger part of the offense, but he's got to get healthy first. Right. And in his time at Notre Dame, he was great catching the ball out of the backfield and a solid runner, good power runner, showed some finesse as well. So, I mean, the question of the Rams running game more comes down to what McVay wants to do with it. We've seen interesting things that he's been trying to do, mostly for protection for Stafford, I think, is setting up Skoranek as the I-back and or the fullback and running Brandon Powell out of the backfield, a couple of different wide receivers out of the backfield. I mean, that's the more interesting, maybe fantasy idea there is maybe, I don't know, Skoranek picking up rushing yards.
Interesting. Okay. Because Tad, we actually talked about this with the Rams offense in particular, that it's like Allen Robinson just doesn't seem like it's a good fit in Los Angeles. Just like, I don't know whether, they plan to use him a certain way. Okay, put that aside.
I'm not going to let this die ever.
For this live stream, at least put it aside, all right?
All right. Last shot for that. But anyway.
So obviously Allen Robinson is just not fitting in this offense. I think they intended to use him as more of like, possibly to take the top off. We're just not seeing that speed. He's still a good route runner. I think he could be a good fit with another team, but just for some reason, Los Angeles is not using him all that way. But what we are seeing, exactly like you laid out, we're seeing some more Ben Skoranek. We're seeing some Tyler Higbee. Obviously, we're getting our daily dose of Cooper Kupp every single week. He's just getting more than enough for fantasy owners there. But just like, would you say that, Skoranek and Higbee have a little bit more value? I know you said you're not a fantasy guy, but just like in this offense, is just their usage a lot higher now than a guy like Allen Robinson, who they went out in the offseason and paid a lot of money to, but just for some reason, just not a fit in this offense.
Well, my jury's still out for Allen Robinson. I still think there's a chance for him in this offense. They showed that against the Panthers.
I didn't
easy tag. Come on,
I didn't say anything.
Yeah, but the motions was enough. But let Ryan finish his take here.
Getting in between anything here. So we'll see how he continues to get worked in. So I wouldn't write him off quite yet. But, I mean, Skoranek has been really, really one of the surprises for this season. I mean, he came in big situations last season, didn't catch the ball all the time, but he's shown better hands and better versatility now that he's being used out of the backfield as well. I mean, the question mark around that, now that we're getting into the wide receivers, Van Jefferson's coming back probably after the bye week.
That's a good sign for this offense for sure.
Yeah, so we'll actually see less Skoranek. So he's probably his usage is going to drop. And in terms of taking the top off of defenses, the Rams have had a terrible time because their offensive line has just been decimated with injuries. So Stafford has just not had enough time to get through his progressions.
For sure.
So in their 3 losses, they've faced 3 of the best pass rushers in the league, in the Bills, 49ers, and who else did they lose to?
The Bills, 49ers, and
I should know this.
As he wears his LAFB hat.
Well, the Cowboys. Yeah.
Cowboys, yes.
With Micah Parsons and their 25 pressures or whatever. But in their 3 wins, they've faced some of the worst pass rushers out there. So I'm going to be interested to see like if they face some more teams that have kind of middle of the road pass rushing and defenses to see who these receivers are and what this offense can really be. But Kyren Williams, I've always envisioned him in this offense. So I think he's a guy to keep your eye on going forward. Darrell Henderson, he's always going to. I think he's a stalwart back there. He's just never going to be the guy. He had such high production coming out of Memphis, something like 8.9 yards per carry or something like that.
It was pretty beastly.
What?
Sure.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he was really good coming out of college.
That. Wow, that's insane.
Yeah, and it's just never translated.
Is he Paxton Lynch's running back? Is that the same era?
I thought that was Antonio Gibson.
Oh, don't tell me that was a combo. That would be a deadly combo, right?
Maybe
there.
Not. I'm not. I know how to. I don't have my Memphis college football history on me. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, we are surprisingly uneducated when it comes to Memphis football, unfortunately. But okay, so Ryan, I want to ask you, as it stands now, give me your final prediction for at the end of the season. What is the NFC West standings going to look like?
I'm thinking that both the Rams and the 49ers are going to end up 10-7.
Okay.
I think that Seattle go 7-10.
Oh, so you think Seattle finishes with a losing record?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
All right.
And I think that Cardinals go 10-7.
Wow. Okay, so you have 3 teams in the NFC West with a winning record, and the Seattle Seahawks are the one that finishes without one.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Interesting.
Oh man, the
Well,
Rams
but that's the
schedule going
crazy thing.
forward.
Well, not to interrupt you. Well, I'm gonna interrupt you, but sorry for doing so. But that's the insane thing about this trade is like this trade just throws everything, not just with the NFC West, but everything in the NFL into flux. Like this entire thing, the NFC South. Now, okay, Panthers are clearly tanking. We can agree with that. And this is again what Murray and I were talking about. Is who this Panthers team reminds me of? Is this what people thought the Miami Dolphins were going to look like when they were tanking for Tua? Like this is what they thought that this team was going to look like. So it's just insane. So now we know, okay, one team in the NFC South completely out of the running. And now the NFC West just got that much more competitive in a very weird division that's weirdly competitive now. So wow, so you had the Seahawks finishing last, really? Because I honestly have the Cardinals finishing last.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's been such a weird year, and the NFC is mediocre. To be very honest,
it's very open.
There's a new NFC East where it's just a bunch of mediocre teams that are. Just
I think Ryan's actually talking about the NFC as a whole. Like I think it's just a very wide open field. It's like there's no team that has clearly stood out on the NFC side. That's like
the Vikings could make the NFC Championship.
They're leading the NFC North right now.
That was my pick. For
nice.
To make it to the NFC Championship against the Rams.
Nice, but I completely agree with Ryan. That's like the NFC is very clouded. It's like there's a lot of season left to play. Bringing it back to the Rams and Niners here in 2 weeks, they're going to be playing each other. So it's like, this is just, up the rivalry, up the intensity of that game, the, watch factor of this game with the trade of Christian McCaffrey. And Tad, I want to close out, we don't want to go too much longer here on the live stream here. We covered a lot here.
It's almost midnight my time. So that'd be lovely.
But yeah, just in case you're catching us at the tail end here, we're breaking the news of the San Francisco 49ers acquiring Christian McCaffrey from the Carolina Panthers here. But yeah, I want to close this out because it was brought up in the comments and we forgot to address this, but just like, obviously Christian McCaffrey is a great fit in San Francisco in this offense, but just what do you think about the fantasy stock for everybody else on this team now? Like, I mean, does Debo stock drop at all? Does Kittle stock drop at all? Does Brandon Ayuk stock drop at all? Just like, how do you feel about the, secondary, tertiary weapons in this San Francisco offense now with this big move?
I don't think it really, and this is what makes it such a great trade. I don't really think it affects anyone else's stock that much except for George Kittle. I think this really actually increases his stock. Murray, you and I were talking about this. This became a meme on Twitter of like, the Moneyball thing of Billy, this is George Kittle. The 49ers are using him as an extra offensive tackle. And now they were doing that because they had a running back that needed the extra blocker. Now you have a talented running back in there, and that's always been the beauty of Shannon's offense is that, you can turn this untalented running back into a talented-looking player. But now that you have McCaffrey, an actually talented running back in there, you no longer have to keep Kittle in there as a blocker. You can take away that extra blocker, and all of a sudden he can make do with that extra player. He can shift his way out of, that tackle. So I think this increases Kittle's value. I don't think it hurts. If I had to pick a player who it hurts the most, I think it may hurt Ayuk's value a little bit.
Possibly a little bit.
But they're still going to lean on Debo. Garoppolo, if anything, this definitely helps Garoppolo's value.
Because what is Garoppolo good at? The short pass. Now he has a receiver in the backfield who can do this and leverage.
That's his bread and butter. Like it's yeah. So I think that Garoppolo's values increase, Kittle's values increase. Like it's again, this is what blows my mind about this trade is like it's a win for both sides. How often can you really say that? And it's just it's. I honestly thought I was falling for. This is live, I'll say it. I thought I was falling for a Ballsack Sports or report thing on Twitter. When I first saw that on my phone, I was like, "There's no way this is real."
One of the fake Adam Schefter accounts or fake Ian Rappaport accounts or
whatever. I thought OBJ signed with the Vikings earlier today. Because I fell for one of those things. But it's just it's so perfect for both sides. The Panthers make up because, and this is something I want to say earlier, is that this is why it's such a great deal for the Panthers as well. They gave up so much value for the Darnold experiment. They gave up so much value for the Baker experiment.
They recouped
Both
some of those
experiments,
losses, exactly.
Yeah, both those experiments have failed. But now you just made up all that value for both those failed experiments and then some. So it's a perfect win for both sides. So I don't think Debo's value goes up or down. I think that remains the same. I don't think Ayuk's value really goes up or down that much. Maybe he goes a little bit up. Jeff Wilson's value, unfortunately, again, because
plummets completely.
He's in my flex start for he's in my flex spot for this weekend. It's I need to figure out what's going on.
The interesting thing too is that Ryan brought this
He
up
may
that
not
Elijah Mitchell's going to be healthy in a couple weeks, but now with the Christian McCaffrey trade, Elijah Mitchell's stock has also dropped as well. So
Dude,
it's like,
but that's another great idea by the 49ers. This is why this is such a good trade, because then you could trade Elijah Mitchell to, let's say, the Falcons, right? Cordell Patterson's going to be 31 next year. So maybe the Falcons want Elijah Mitchell as a young, similar style running back. Like, this was such a great trade by the 49ers. I can't believe they got this is absolute robbery by the 49ers. So, in terms of fantasy, my ultimate take is Kittle's stock is up. Ayuk is even. Debo doesn't change at all. Garoppolo goes up. Jeff Wilson is absolutely the tinker. If you have Jeff Wilson right now, and if you are in my league and you're watching this episode, I am lying. Jeff Wilson is going to do great. You should absolutely give me whoever I ask for him. But if you're not in my league, Jeff Wilson is now he's not even rosterable, in my opinion. And yes, I just made up a word, rosterable, but like, just get him off your roster because he's useless now.
Yeah. So I mean, crazy breaking news. We got you covered here on the LAFB network because we do fantasy football. Obviously, that's why we went live today. We gave you the Rams perspective. We gave you the fantasies perspective.
This night got really out of hand.
It did. It definitely did. But yeah, if you want all the great fantasy updates from us, make sure you see all of our social media handles down below. You got my personal handle, I'm Decide23. You got Tad's at Decide94. You got the show handle, The Decide Guys. And of course, we're on Instagram at The Decide Guys as well. Make sure you follow our good friend Ryan Anderson. You see his Twitter handle right there below his beautiful face, RL Anderson, LAFB. He's got you covered with LA Rams stuff. He's got you covered with draft stuff. He's got you covered on all fronts. He publishes our articles. Like, I mean, we love this guy. He got this.
Dude, I love you for doing that. God knows I can't do that.
I've learned so much about fantasy football from you guys. It's really great to do that.
There you go. There you go. A benefit of publishing our articles there. But yeah, we got you guys all covered. LAFB Network always comes to you with all the breaking news. And everybody who tuned in, appreciate y'all, you guys.
Thank you, guys.